So here's how we can install BigDL. First, we need a Hadoop cluster. And so that means is that we can use Cloudera, Hortonworks, or MapR, or some other distribution. Now, we can also use cloud-based versions like Microsoft's HD Insights, Amazon's Elastic MapReduce, or EMR, or Google Dataproc. Then, we need to ensure that we're running Apache Spark. Most of the Hadoop versions also include an optional support to install Apache Spark as part of their install. We also need to have a Python distribution available. Many developers prefer Anaconda for this. We can also use the system Python. Finally, we need to set up and install BigDL itself. Well, does this sound daunting? Well, rest assured, we're making this easy for you. So, the BigDL sandbox. So we have a Docker container that is going to make running BigDL easily. This Docker container allows you to download and install BigDL in one easy step. This isn't for production use, but it will help you in getting going right away and playing with BigDL. And one advantage of our Docker container is it's open source and transparent. So the Docker file is available as part of distribution, and you can modify and our sandbox to meet your needs and distribute it at will. Now, if you haven't heard of it, Docker is a revolutionary way to package applications, which allows us to package an application together with all of its dependencies in one reusable module that we can run on any platform. So to do this, we need to download Docker for our platform. So Docker has versions for Windows, Mac, and Linux. If you're running Windows, we recommend using Docker for Windows, but you'll need Windows 10 Professional for that with Hyper-V installed. Otherwise, you're going to have to fall back to Docker Toolbox. Mac and Linux versions have Docker for their platforms as well, which should be able to effectively run on modern Mac and Linux systems. Okay, so let me demonstrate how we can download Docker. So we'll go here to docker.com, and we can find the version of Docker for our container. And we will get Docker. I'm running a Mac, so I would click on Docker for Mac. However, if you're running Windows or Linux, you can get a download for your platform. So once we've downloaded and installed Docker, we should have Docker then available. And as you can see here on my Mac, I have Docker running now. So once we have Docker up and going, we can then go and install and download the Docker tutorials from Intel. So to do this, we're going to go to github.com, and it's temporarily available on Elephant Scale. That may change here in the future, / BigDL tutorials. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and either clone or download this for our platform. The easiest way will probably be for us to just download the zip file to our computer, and then we can go in and install that as well. Okay, so once we have that cloned or downloaded, we can then go and we can go to the BigDL tutorials directory that I have, that I've now had. So we have a script that we can run here that will run our BigDL in the Docker container all in one step. So on Mac and Linux, we can run that from the command line by simply saying run BigDL container.sh. And then we're going to run that with the container name, which should be available from Docker Hub at Intel/BigDL. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run this. Now, if you choose to do your own build of our Docker container, which we highly encourage you to do, you would substitute Intel BigDL with the image name of your custom build. So, and you can do that simply by going in and compiling that. But in this case, we're just going to run Intel BigDL. Okay. So you see now we are running here, and this automatically will start up Jupyter Notebook running on our computer. So now this is running inside the Docker container, but the advantage of this approach is that we are able to do this here and load this directly in our browser on our computer. So let me go ahead and start this up. And you can see here I copied here. Now our work is going to be right here under work. So now this work directory is going to be mapped to your local file system. So that means any notebooks or other things that we want to load on the Docker container, you can do it after local files. So this is kind of the best of both worlds, because we're doing all of our processing for BigDL inside the Docker container, which will help us especially on running on non-Linux platforms that may not have Hadoop or Spark running. However, it also means that we can load all of our local data on our own computer. So any notebooks or other data or intermediate data or results that we want to save, we have the ability to load that even outside the Docker container. Let us now go and check out what we have. So we have here a BigDL distribution. We have some data. We have our Docker files. We have some images here. And we also have some Jupyter notebooks. So since we're running inside of Jupyter, I am going to go and click here on the notebooks directory. And we just want to make sure right now on where we are in running our Docker containers. In the next video, I'm going to go over actually running some examples and tutorials of how to use Docker for big learning. But for now, I'm simply going to load up this testing123.ipython notebook. And I also suggest, if you're following along with me, to please go ahead and start that up on your own machines as well. Again, you should be able to run this on any platform, and that's the beauty of running with the sandbox within Docker. So let's go, and I'm going to go ahead and click on testing123.ipython notebook. So here, you can see here, this is going to help us to test our BigDL installation to make sure everything's running properly. Now remember, BigDL has a lot of moving parts. We have Hadoop, we have Spark, we have BigDL itself, and we have Anaconda Python, and all of these things running together. So we need to make sure that this is all working. So one of the things that running along with Spark is going to give us is a couple of instantiated objects, namely the Spark context and the Spark session. The Spark context applicable for versions of Spark before 2.0, and Spark session being included there. So you can see here that we do have the SC object here, the newer API here. Also, we see that this is available as well. So these are both available, and we can see this here on our installation. Okay, so let's now test creating a data frame in Spark. So I'm going to go ahead and run the Spark. Now notice that this is a Spark data frame, so we're going to require Spark running to actually make this work. And you can see that we're running this, and we should be getting our results shortly. There we go. So you can see here we just created a Spark data frame. Now notice this is different than a Pandas data frame. This is a data frame that is distributed to our cluster. Of course, we're running this inside of a Docker container, which means, of course, that we're only running on a single node, but nevertheless, we have this ability to be distributed on a Spark cluster. Okay, so now we're going to be getting into importing data from BigDL. And what we're going to do is we're going to do our imports here in Python, making sure that our imports are looking good. So let's go ahead and run this cell. All right, so we ran this. We tried to do our imports of BigDL, and then, as it says here, our imports are looking good. Now we're going to be doing a hello world here in BigDL. So what we're going to do is we're going to initialize the engine here, and we're going to show the version of BigDL that we're running here. And we're going to go ahead and try to create a linear layer in BigDL just to make sure that this is all working. Okay, so you notice we said hello BigDL world. We're getting our BigDL version here, and now we are running a create linear as well. So looking good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to ensure that we have our Python environment running well. So I'm going to be testing our ability to run with NumPy and Pandas here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a NumPy array, and I'm going to be setting up a Pandas data frame. And you can see that there we go. There's our data frame. All looks good. Now note here, of course, that we are running as part of the Python environment. And so one of the advantages of that is we get the richness of the Python ecosystem. Some of our examples that we're going to do later actually involve running with NLTK. So we're going to import NLTK here, and we're going to go ahead and run this as well. So to do that, we actually need to install NLTK. No problem. We can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say which pip3, and I'm going to just say pip3 install nltk. Okay. And actually, to do this, I'm going to need to do this, run this from within the Docker container. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to do that within the Docker container. So let's also do some graphs. So we will go ahead and run some graphs here so you can see the graphs that we have running. And we're also going to ensure that we have the Seaborn library running as well. So if you see this nice distribution plot, then we're good. So if we're all here, everything ran well, then great. We are ready to explore BigDL. Okay, so now we've successfully installed BigDL. We've ran through an example notebook that while we didn't do much with BigDL, we've nonetheless tested our configuration and made sure that all is running properly. So now we're going to be going on in the next video and doing our first simple deep learning models in which we use BigDL for doing some actual deep learning. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much.